Mm-hmm. 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 Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining. Hey, it's been a while since I've done a video. So I wanted to get right into it today and talk about, sometimes, for example, I don't watch the news and I don't listen to the radio. And if it wasn't for YouTube, there's a lot of news I wouldn't even know about. And I feel like that preserves me on some level, because there's certain news, most of the news that we hear about, what can we do about it actually? And the way our system is built, what we've been told that we can do about it doesn't really, that's not how it works. We're learning that that's not how it works. We're learning that they don't really care about us. And when I say they, I'm talking about, systems of governments and things that basically tell us that we are being supported and being told the truth. So what's happening right now is major distractions and resets. So planetarily, there's going to be resets. Energetically, there's going to be resets. And when it comes to the divine feminine, this reset, it was already set. It was already set a few years ago. And as the shift is growing, because it's very similar. So what is happening? So many truths are coming out. Again, the truths about us, meaning people who have been told that they're African American, are actually Temerians, meaning they are from Temeria, which is where America gets its name. And the feminine divine is rising. We're seeing so many more people really embracing the Great Mother, the idea of goddesses or the goddess, and that the brown mother is the original mother. And the slow but consistent, purposeful individual spirituality happening, or spiritualism or religion or practices, rather than mass groups, even though there is still this, kind of like generational connection to mainstream religions. But a lot of people have stepped away and questioned and not stepped away from belief, but stepped away from certain indoctrinated practices. So with those shifts happening, we're going to see a whole bunch of other shifts happening. We're going to see all these seemingly loss of control systems. We're going to see some of that break down to where we actually gain more control, more benefits, more abundance. And then we'll see other systems that will kind of tighten up and seem more restrictive. That is, again, that is ultimately, and this is why, and you can check me out on Patreon, or you can watch my other videos here. This is why I truly believe the most important thing for us as individuals is to recognize and heal traumas, to be like the wild animals who do not carry fear and do not carry trauma in their bodies. And I do believe that there are many, many ways to do this. One of the ones that you can do yourself is intuitive muscle exercises, where you tap into where your pain is. You let the emotion show up, which is typically crying. Sometimes it can be rage, and release it. Because the media and the news, and even sometimes our jobs, people we're connected with, are going to be influenced by the mainstream social construct, and the mainstream social construct and the mainstream social spell that I call it is specifically made to create trauma and to create avoidant attachments and basically attachment styles, so that we subconsciously do things that are being shown to us via this technology, through language. I've talked about how Hebrew and Latin, there's all these words that connect, and one that came recently that I might have mentioned in an old video, but we're discovering that there are many connections through the lands and through the islands, and with Jamaica, if I remember, there is an Ireland connection. Well, okay, if you take Ireland and you break it down, if you use the I would say possible mixed language of Irie, to say something is Irie. Well, the first 3 letters of Ireland spell Irie, so it would be Irie land. Just a side note. Because you know how I like to break down words. If you don't know, I like to break down words. That's actually what's helped me figure out a lot of things in the world, is writing, reading, and then taking English words, spelling them backwards, playing with their pronunciation, like English. It's a glitch in the system. Our language is actually a glitch in the system that continuously creates a spell that those who created it in the first place. Do you know I was reading? Okay. So because it was Easter the other day, and I meant to write it down, but I'm going to spell it right now. So I started going down the paths of Easter, because there is information that Easter comes from Ishtar, Asarte, and Estre, Eostre, which is a German goddess of spring, and mainly because I'm starting to notice between recognizing the connection between the 9-day planetary calendar, the goddesses, and our holidays. It kind of trips me out, actually, because it typically matches like a full moon or a new moon. I'm seeing it matching up to certain other religious holidays. And Venus, which it was Venus Day on Easter on our timeline in the United States, on the Western Hemisphere of the planet, supposedly. Because even that, you break down. Okay. That Venus is also known as the Eastern Star. And Passover is based on the moon because there is a Hebrew calendar that's based on the moon. And same with the Islamic calendar. This is why Ramadan, and also we'll also see that Hanukkah isn't always around Christmas time. And same with Ramadan. It's at different times in the year because it goes by the moon. So I was looking up some information because Roman and Greek kind of existed at the same time, but most of the people who were writing things in Roman, and Latin and English didn't exist yet. They didn't even exist yet. So who created those languages? But Hebrew existed. Actually, I read that Hebrew went through a time of not being spoken because it was considered, it just like many isms, racisms and such, the practice of speaking Hebrew became, I think, I don't want to say bad, but just not allowed. It wasn't allowed. And so there was like a resurgence, I think, in like the 1700s. So that's also interesting because English is predominantly Hebrew. Okay, back to, so I was looking up about the goddess. So the way that it's spelled is Eostre, which is like Ostre. So I also noticed that some of the names were tre instead of, so TRE instead of TER, which is what we do in English, right? And this is over, my theory is that because it's happened in my own lifetime. When I was growing up, you didn't say ain't. Ain't isn't a word, is what I got told over and over and over. But guess what? It's in the dictionary now, and people use it all the time. And I'm noticing that the word a lot, which is not one word, it's actually two words, a lot. You don't say a little as one word. You say a little, right? In English, like at this point, it's controlling, but I'm just trying to make a point about how things change. I had found a letter from many years ago where tomorrow was two words. It was to-morrow. So this is what happens over time. Over time, language changes. How we write things change. So ultimately, because as you know, I talk about the sibyls and the prophetesses and the goddesses, as far as like, I'm pretty convinced. My knowing is it all began with the woman. Why is that my knowing? Because it makes the most sense. Like, all the teachings talk about what we learn in nature and how to alchemize. And what do we see in nature? Well, we see that the female mammal or the female animal, unless it's a plant, a type of fish, there are some fish that will change its gender. And there are things like frogs and amphibians that can also change their gender, which is where I think the snakes originally came from when I talk about the goddesses of Delphi, because I believe the symbol of the snake, because some snakes can also change their gender. And if you look at a snake, unless you don't really know what gender they are, represents the ancient goddesses, because they were able to procreate without a man, without another gender. Because if you see it in nature, it can exist. It exists. It is possible. So, besides those specific animals or creatures or water creatures, and most of those are predominantly water creatures, except for the plants. Plants can also change their genders. Everything comes from a woman. Sorry, female. So, that is my knowing. My knowing is the stories have been changed. They had to have been, because most of the stories don't make sense and the timelines have been changed. So, when it comes to Easter, and also because in this article I was reading, they were talking about how the rabbit and the eggs are symbols of the goddess, but if you look back at the story of this particular goddess that is specifically represents Easter in the Germanic pantheon, rabbits and eggs are not one of her symbols. But if you do a little research about magic mushrooms, you will find out that the golden egg is actually related to the golden cap mushrooms that are found under certain patches where rabbits would hang out. And then there's subtle hints, because if you know about like DMT and psilocybin, in certain instances you can become very amorous. So that might be where. And also, there are a lot of rabbits around in springtime, but you don't see eggs just laying around. So where did that come from, right? So the story is that children, because they have smaller hands, would go out and look for the golden eggs, which were the golden cap mushrooms. And that's another theme you will see around our holidays, is mushrooms and wine. So how is it that in so many spiritual pantheons alcohol is included? And ancient stories of mead, which is made from honey, which is extremely healing, and it was supposed to be medicine. And same with wine and spirits, it was supposed to be medicine. So wouldn't it make more sense that somewhere this is where you can see where the emotional manipulation will affect other things? Because if everything is well and all the community is participating, then the way everybody looks at, say, mushrooms and alcohol would be different. It wouldn't. I just am curious, because I know how alcohol affects like me and people today, and how there's like this, there's whole systems built to help people get off of alcohol. But it's in all of our religious scriptures. What's up with that? It's just curious. I have my theories. My theories are that life wasn't as complicated as it is now, and we had more time for healing and each other. So, because when you're happy and uplifted, when you are drinking, you're typically with friends or family, or if you're by yourself, you're doing something. It's not like it's a need, it's more like an addition. So my theory is that's where a lot of these things originated, but not the mushrooms. I think mushrooms have been a source of medicine for, I can't even probably guess how many years. And that all the groups, the kings and queens, the sibyls, the followers, all learned about these different kind of medicines and these different type of spiritually open-minding type of things. It's just a theory, because time to think about things and look up stuff. But I got totally sidetracked talking about Astray, and okay. So in all that research, I did find two things. One is, supposedly Ishtar is a separate goddess from Astray, is what it says in the article. In the article I read, it was just one article. They did have references as to why, and it's specifically because of researching this dramatic goddess. But I also theorized that names got changed, like I was saying before, over time, and as people moved and as languages changed. And then maybe I should look up where German came from, because a lot of English has a lot of German in it as well, like kindergarten. Okay. So in that is where it referenced, because I was doing the 90 calendar where Venus matches, and then Venus is also known as the Eastern Star, and then Eastar, there is a reference there about that. So is it possible that Venus was also named Astre? Because all the way back to the Popol Vuh, which is supposed to be pre-biblical and it was like supposedly like the ancient Mayan Bible, talks about Venus and how bright of a star it is. And I have my whole theories about that. So, with all of that said, we come to today and we see that there's a match with the 9-day planetary calendar. There's a match with the 7-day Gregorian calendar. There's matches with gematria, however you might pronounce it, which is another example of how things get changed from how they sound. And then the obvious, like, keeping information, keeping certain knowledge. This is part of it. I think I could be way off. This is when it comes to the planetary calendar. This was just kind of downloads that I got, because why would we live on a planet but then look outwardly all the time? Like, of course we would look outwardly because we have eyes and we would be able to see those things, but wouldn't this planet be the first planet? How come Earth is not included in any of our astrology? That doesn't even make sense. Why don't we have an Earth sign? Is that our ascendant? That would make more sense. It should be called an Earth sign. That would make more sense. Because who came up with this originally? I hate to say that, but we did. The mothers and the women. So my theory is this was our first planet. This was the first planet we checked in with the energies with, and then we went from this planet and asked, and then we received messages from the other planets, and then from our higher self beings. They say aliens. I've said this a long time ago. I don't think it was aliens. I think it was us in different form, in a different environment. We know that there used to be giant trees. If there were giant trees, wouldn't there have been giant people? And if we had giant people, wouldn't we have even bigger brains to be able to figure stuff out? So that's what I think this is all. I think this is what this is coming back down to. Is like, it's us. It's us. And the more they can keep us distracted and in our feelings out there, because can we do anything about politics, really? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but by this time in my age, I'm clearly seeing that all the things I was taught about voting and participating and those type of things, it doesn't matter. There's some other guy behind the curtain, or guys or girls or peoples they got a plan. And they kind of try to stick to it. And then we definitely give energy to certain things, and from football games to celebrations, and a lot of those things, like I've talked about Thanksgiving, and the pumpkins around Halloween. And what does a pumpkin look like? Doesn't it look like a womb, and do you know pumpkin is actually very healing for the womb? We're going to talk about some healing tips before I get off. But there are things that we participate in with our compensation, meaning we go along with what they tell us it is, because we are generally good people. We are generally trusting. So we're like, yeah, okay, this is like, All Hallows Eve is to represent the saints. So what are we doing? What is this dressing up and candy, and what is that all about? What are we doing? Not that I think it's bad. Halloween is one of my favorite holidays, but what is the magic behind, what is the real story behind it? What are we actually giving our energy to? And then are we receiving that back? We're not even being told what we're giving to, but we're still doing it, thinking we're giving it to one thing. However, possibly, maybe not that. I mean, at this point, I don't even say maybe. I don't think it's that. I think there's a whole thing going on that we don't know about. I've been saying before, but we're figuring it out. We are figuring it out. And so as we're figuring it out, they're going to be like, over here, over here. So don't pay any attention to that, but what is actually going on? What is happening behind the scenes? And so healing and basic messages from Great Mother. Put your feet on the ground. 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 Put your hands and feet on the ground. Earthing, grounding, putting your feet on the ground. Connecting with the planet. Also, learn what foods grow naturally around you. Because let's just say that it will only come down to the farmers. Okay, well, what if they take away the farms? Well, what did we used to do? We used to be nomadic, and we would go where there was water and natural food sources. So obviously, if you live in the country, you're probably pretty aware of what you can eat. But check out your local park. You know, there's plenty of weeds that are edible, bushes that are edible, flowers that are edible, bark that's edible. I mean, most towns have an oak, a maple, a pine tree, all of which have food in them and can help provide food. Mushrooms are edible. Let's see what else. And then, of course, there's wild animals in certain places, right? So not that I promote hunting, but these are just things to be aware of as well. You know, blackberries. There's a whole creek where I live. Literally, probably at least 3 families could live well just off of that creek with all the blackberries and other greens and trees that grow around that area. And then something that's came back into my radar, so I want to share it with you guys, is castor oil packs, or castor oil in general, and how beneficial it is for healing. I just saw a little short on Instagram where castor oil packs on your abdomen can help with fibroids, help with your digestion. Everything that's underneath your abdomen can be healed with castor oil packs. And you can also rub it directly on your body. You can do a cheat where you rub it directly on your body, wear like a t-shirt or something cotton preferably over it, and then have a little heat pack. And even if you don't have a heat pack, you just kind of put a pillow or something over it so your own body heat helps heat it up. The heat just helps with the absorption. You don't have to have it. And then this is a time where there are a lot of natural flowers and such starting to spring up, so you can probably look up everything. Even if you don't look it up, if you notice that like deer are eating it or turkeys are eating it or any other creatures out there, then it's probably edible for you. Okay. And then oh yeah, singing and sound. Oh, and the other one that's coming out is that light language. People are learning about and speaking their light language. And a long time ago, I had heard light language. It's the language we need. All right. So, it is the intention behind it is incredibly just powerful and beautiful and healing. Okay. All right. I think that's the video for today before I run out of time and take up too much time. Those are my little healing tips for today. And until next time.